Hello and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to build out this entire tool. We're going to vibe code it. And essentially, we're going to be able to ingest any Excel file we want. So this can be in any different format, and it's going to have the same kind of details like SKUs and prices, which is common with e-commerce websites. And normally they have to search through all these files and copy and paste all the different details they need. And with all these variables, we're going to put them into a sheet that we find useful in a format that we find useful. So it's basically a data extraction automation that's super useful to businesses. Now, I'm doing it in the context of e-commerce, but you can modify this automation I'm going to show you how to build step by step for any industry that you're interested in. And within this automation, we're going to build in a front end where you're going to be able to upload these Excel or CSV documents. And we're also going to build a back end that's going to go and process these CSV documents, do all that magic extraction, and put it all into a format that's really useful to our business. So we're going to build that front end and a back end. And the tool we're going to be using to build this, if you've watched one of my videos before, it's of course going to be Google Antigravity. This is an AI-powered coding assistant, and we're going to build this entire thing without writing a single line of code. Now, once we've done this and we've built out our entire automation, we're then going to actually deploy our entire solution using Google Cloud. So this whole solution is going to live on the web. Now, who am I and what do I do? Well, my name's Yash and I run my own AI automation agency, Pluto AI, and we're currently hitting $20,000 per month. And while I've been building my own AI automation agency, I've been traveling, right? I'm a digital nomad. So here is me working in Bali in this really nice shack. I was almost going to get attacked by a lizard in this shack as well. And here is a really nice view with a mountain in Indonesia. So this is a part of some of my journeys where I'm traveling around the world. I'm currently in Hong Kong. And while I was traveling, a bunch of people used to ask me, how do you afford to travel, number one, for such a long amount of time? What do you do for a living? And how can I travel indefinitely? And this is when I started this channel, right? And this channel is going to be to show you how to build AI automations that people actually want. And we're going to do it step by step. So you can follow along with this video and build out something that's genuinely valuable from a guy that actually builds automations and sells them to people for many thousands of dollars. I'm also going to break down the anti-gravity framework I use to create valuable automations like this one, step by step. And if you're interested in this lifestyle or actually starting your own business for whatever reason, then I have a community over here which teaches you how to run your own AI automation agency, if that's something you're interested in from a guy that's done it. All right, so enough jibber jabbing, let's get into this automation. So over here, we have the step-by-step document that I mentioned. You can find this within my community. And over here, we have step one, which is to decide what we want to build. And for example, you can build an invoice extractor tool. What we're building today, what I mentioned at the start of this video, is we want an automation where we can put in our CSV files. And within these CSV files, our automation is going to analyze them and pick out the data we need. And we're going to do this in the context of an e-commerce business. So we already have done step one. We know what we want to build today. Now, step two is we want to use prompt one to define exactly what we are going to build. So let's go over here to our lovely prompts tab and let's click on prompt one, figure out what we're building. I'm going to copy this entire prompt and I'm going to paste it into anti-gravity and I'm going to put it into a pro mode and I'm going to click go. And now our prompt is asking me what do we want to build. So let's go and do that. Hello, so I want to build a tool where I can enter in CSV documents and these documents will be like supplier information. And what I want to do is I want to extract the information from the supplier documents using our certain variables that we're going to need. And within this, we're going to put this into a structured format into our own CSV file so then our systems can go and ingest. So essentially our supplier documents are going to come in numerous different formats. And what I want to do is build an automation using AI and also any other tools that we need to essentially grab all the information from this CSV in the different formats, pull the information we need, and then put them into our document over there. Perfect. So here is a general scope of exactly what I explained to you guys at the start of the video. We have it over here and I'm going to click go with this and it's going to build us out a scope on this. First of all, it's going to do a bit of consultation. It's going to ask us a few questions regarding like, how is this going to work? Maybe get into a bit more of the niggly details. And then once that's done, it's going to come up with a full project scope. Okay, so I went through and I answered all the different questions. It asked me if I want an API connection so I can grab the CSV files. I'm just going to do a manual drag and drop. because normally supplier files are received in an email and you can probably connect that up. But for now, for our automation, we're going to do a manual drag and drop where you download the supplier file probably from your email and you can push it straight into the tool, which I think is the easiest and simplest way to do this. First, to ask what fields do we want to extract, which is over here. I'm going to be honest, I don't know many e-commerce fields, so I just asked it to come up with some fields, and boom, over here we have the 8 fields that we're going to extract, which is cool. And then it asks, does it want us to preview the table or just give us like a download button where we can download the CSV? I want to preview our, like the whole CSV in a table first, make sure everything's okay, make some edits if we need to, and then click download, which is a lot more easier than having to download it, check it, redo it. This way is much, much better. So let's go with this. We preview in a table, then download. And then it asked me if we want to upload multiple files or like one file. I should have the ability to upload multiple files, and there might be like 50 products per file. I just gave it a random number. That should all be fine. I think even if it has more, I don't think the automation should have an issue based on my experience in building automations. And do we want a separate file for each supplier, or do we want to compile them all into one massive list? I just went, let's compile them all into one massive list. This obviously depends on, like, if you're building for a client, what the client wants. And secondly, it can also depend on whether, you know, if you're building it for yourself, how you'd like that to be formatted. I just want it in one giant master list, so that's what I told it. Sweet. And now if anything's missing, like for example, the CSV file might not have, let's say like a price or whatever other field we have, what should we do? I just said to highlight that field in red, just so we can check and make sure that it hasn't missed it, but rather it's just not available in the CSV file, which is all sweet. And then boom, over here we have the project summary that we need. So this is what I really like, right? You don't have to do as much of the thinking. The AI is going to consult you on questions where it thinks there are gaps. And then boom, it's going to ask you those questions. You just answer them like you're talking to a human, and then it will come up with a full project scope. And it is one of the most powerful ways to get an idea from here, written down in a neat format that has all the available information that we need. So boom, we have the project scope over here. If we go back to our steps, so that is step 1 over here. And now we got step 3, which is to determine how we're actually going to build this automation out. So if we go to prompts over here and we go over to prompt 2, which is to figure out what we're going to build. I'm going to copy this prompt over here and paste this in. Also, one thing to note, I grew up in the UK and English is my first language. If English isn't your first language and you think I'm speaking too fast, drop a comment saying you're talking too fast, and in my future videos I'll try and talk a little bit slower. I can understand sometimes I talk a little fast for someone that might not be their first language, so let me know. Okay, so I'm going to paste in our prompt 2 over here and I'm going to click enter. This is in a brand new chat rather than in the chat where we had the project scope. This is largely to preserve our context limit. So if you know anything about how AI works, sometimes some AIs have context limits and they forget what we've previously discussed. So that's why I'm starting in a new chat, and it's just going to say, please share the project scope document. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste in our project scope document and go over here. And now what this is going to do is it's going to identify tools based on what we want to build. So we've identified what we want to build, and now we've got to identify the tools to define and like to understand how we're going to build out what we want to build. So that's what this is doing over here. Okay, so it's recommending Supabase for our database, which is fine. I'm completely cool with that. So if you've never come across Supabase before, it is like a really common database that people use when they're vibe coding. It has normally got quite a big free plan, so I quite enjoy using Supabase. So we're going to use Supabase, which is great. Then processing steps, it's going to use the front end to drag and drop, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's all cool. Then for the front end file reception, I'm going to trust it. I think it's using a TAN-stack table, extremely lightweight, perfect. It's cool, ideal for master review table. This is all cool. I don't know much about like front end technology like that, so I'm going to trust it on that front, which is cool. Then the back end, it's going to use Pandas library as a Python library. Sure, let's go with that. Why not? Pandas incredibly forgiving with messy unstructured data, which is most reliable choice here. Awesome. And then the AI schema and mapping takes and forces them into 8 specific fields. This is great. Okay, I trust this instructor using a Python library. Fine, let's do that. Its recommendation is using instructor. I think this is all cool as well. Incredibly reliable. Sure, we'll use that. Why not? Combined with OpenAI, that's fine. We've got an API key that we can use there. Data validation, it's going to use another Python library. For the first time, if you ever watch my videos, I always have something to say about the tech stack. I always do some switching and modeling. But in this front, I think it's actually picked out a pretty good tech stack. I'm not super like big brain on all the different Python libraries and stuff like that because I don't really code myself. I'm normally just rely on the AI to code, but I do know a lot about different AI tools and APIs, and I think it's largely picked out what we need for this automation. So I am very okay with this. This sounds really, really cool. So what is our next step? So we've gone and used prompt to determine how we're going to build our automation. Now the next step is to generate backend instructions for anti-gravity. So let's go ahead and do that. So this is using prompt 3. So I'm going to flick over to prompt 3 over here. I'm going to copy this. So I've pasted in prompt 3. I'm going to click enter, and now it's going to go and generate us some backend instructions. So while it's going and doing that, let's keep the productivity high. And we're going to move on to step 5, which is to add our agents.md file into Antigravity. So if you've never used Antigravity before, I want you to come over here to antigravity.google, which is the URL to go download Antigravity. One of the most annoying things about using hotel Wi-Fi is sometimes it can be incredibly slow. So we're going to wait an eternity for Antigravity website to load up, but here it is. And you can click download for Mac OS. And once you've actually gone and downloaded this file, you should open up Antigravity and log in, and eventually it should look something like this. And what you want to click is open folder, and I'm going to create a new project in my Antigravity YT videos page. I'm going to click new folder over here, and I'm going to call this extract from CSV for ecom business, right? That's a cool title for the project we're going to build. I'm going to click create. And over here is the folder where our whole project is going to live. All the different Python files that we write, all the front end files that we write are all going to be written in this folder stored on your laptop. So we're going to click open over here in the empty folder, and boom, we have a brand new project ready to go. And I want you to click this new file button, and we're going to call this Agents.md. Now, if you're unfamiliar with an Agents.md file is, it's essentially a file that has all the instructions for the agent that we're going to use to code this entire project. So it's going to tell it what tech stack to use, what to do and what not to do. And don't worry about this, because if you flick over to our step-by-step instructions, you'll see this tab called Agents.md. We're going to go over here and copy everything from our Agents.md file, and we're going to go over to Agents.md over here and paste it all in. Sweet. Now you need to press Command S if you're on Mac or Control S if you're on Windows to make sure we save the Agents.md file. If you notice, there was a dot over here and that dot's disappeared because we've saved it. Cool, I'm going to close this. I'm also going to make our agent a little bigger, and we're going to go over to the left over here, and we're going to go over to our Google Gemini page, and you can see it's generated us the backend instructions. I'm going to copy these, and I'm going to flick over to Antigravity over here and click paste. I'm going to switch our model to Opus 4.6 thinking. So I much prefer Claude for backend and Gemini for frontend. So therefore, we're currently building out the backend, so we're going to use Claude, and we're going to use the planning stages. This is probably quite a big project to start off with, and I'm going to click enter. Sweet. So now our backend is going to start to generate. While that's working, again, let's keep the productivity up in multitask. So we're going to go back to our steps over here. We're on step 6, which is to build the backend. And while we're doing that, we're also going to generate the front-end instruction. So let's go over here to prompt 4, and I'm going to quickly copy over my front-end instructions. Let's copy this, and I'm going to go over to Google Gemini. In the same place we got the backend instructions, I'm going to paste this, and I've pasted in my front-end instructions over here. And I think it's going to go through the same process of asking us questions, defining what the front end is going to look like, and then essentially going through everything. In the meantime, let me flick back to Antigravity over here. We can see it's currently doing some planning and implementation plans. So let it go through this. And cool, over here, the front end prompt has done its thing, and we can see we're building a single wizard or pipeline, where the user goes step by step or join a multi-page dashboard. Let's have a think about this. Okay, so while I was sorting out some of the front end questions, I saw Antigravity created us an implementation plan, which you can see over here. It normally tells you exactly how it's going to build things. And it's done a lot of thought about how it's going to build the backend and all the cool different things that we're going to need. And essentially, we've got the whole thing over here. I've just clicked proceed with the implementation plan. And do you know what? I'm going to change this for agent decides whether it should approve or not approve the implementation plan. So cool. The plan has been approved, and I'm going to go back to answering my questions over here on the front end, and then we can run through all the questions it asked me and how I answered. Okay, so I answered all the questions and we've got a front end scope. But first, let me check up on Antigravity. I can still see it still building our backend. So while it's building that, let me go through and show you everything we did here. So it asked me here, do we just want to upload, review, and download? Or do we want like a multi-page dashboard? I asked it for pros and cons of each because I really couldn't decide what would be better. And it said, Option 1 is kind of like a extremely high conversion to the goal. But if the user refreshes, it's going to lose their place and lose all the data, which was a real big deal breaker for me. And because we're using Supabase, which has memory, we're not using like a database that will delete as soon as you refresh the page. It doesn't make sense to do this option 1. So therefore we chose option 2, which is kind of more like a dashboard where, it's going to have suppliers and it's going to have like recent batches, etc. A little bit more complicated to build, but much better because we're using Supabase. And then we have option 2, which is the one we picked. And then it asks if we want like a whole dashboard with like stats and all of this stuff. I said no stats. I don't want like how many things we've created, how many files we've processed, etc. Might be useful in a second iteration, but for like a MVP automation, it's probably not the best thing to have. So you could definitely add it in if you would like. But for me, it's a little too complex for this solution entirely. So I said no quick stats, let's just keep it simple. And then I also said over here, it's like, how do you want the user to experience the wait? Like, for example, OpenAI and like actually extracting all the things might take time. So we have the active progress and then the background task. Even if we allow it to show real-time progress is really useful. And I really wanted it to show real-time progress. So the user's not just sitting there waiting. It shows like a percentage. So that's why I decided to pick out like a background processing task rather than anything else. So that's what I said over here. And once we have this master list view of the actual automation, do we want to have like a filter to errors only? Again, it's an MV, like a start automation. I didn't want to make it too complicated for no reason. So I said, no, we can just scroll through and find bright red things. It's not that complicated to do. So there I said, no, I don't want to filter the errors. I will just scroll through and find them. So that is super, super cool. Then it designed a front end specification, but it asked me a question. Like, once we download it, do we want to move it to complete or do we want to leave it open? Well, I want to leave it open because if I download it and I realize I've made an error in not editing things, I'd rather do it in the actual front end that we've built. So therefore I left it as, please keep it as forever. So that's what I did. I answered the question over here and then it created me a front end specification over here. So we can give this to Antigravity once our backend is built and we've run a quick test on it, then we can give it a front end so it can test that instead. And I can see over here, Antigravity is finishing up. It's creating a walkthrough and finalized task checklist for our backend. So we can go and run through that and check everything that we need to check once it's done and built and come up with the walkthrough. As you can see over here, it's starting to make the walkthrough for us. Okay, literally after 3 seconds, the backend was all done as I expected. It has given us a few tasks to do. So we need to create a .env file. So if you've ever built an Antigravity before, you should know what this is, but it's essentially where all your API keys are stored. So we got to go and create this file, which is super easy to do. And we've got to add in all our credentials, which I will go and show you how to do that. And then we need to run this SQL on the Supabase to make sure we can go and create the table. This will all make sense once I go and show you that we're going to go and do it. I'm going to show you how this will all be done step by step, so don't worry about that. We need to create a storage bucket, which we will go and do as well. And then we need to start the server and actually try and, ingest a file and see if it can extract some cool things for us. So let's go and do that. So the first thing we need to do is step number 1, which is to create a .env file. So we've got over here .env example, which is this. And over here, we can just go and add in our URL, service keys, OpenAI keys, which is nice. So I'm just going to copy this file firstly. So is there a duplicate button over here? I'm just going to copy and paste it over here. And I'm going to edit the name of this file. So let me click this and click rename. And I'm going to rename it to .env, boom. And now I'm going to add all my keys in. So the first thing I'm going to add is my OpenAI key. You can find your OpenAI key at OpenAI API. If you type that into Google, you should go and find your OpenAI API key there. I'm not going to show you how to find this because it's been overdone like a million times in AI automation space. So I'm sure you'll be able to find it very easily by searching up on YouTube if you've never set up an OpenAI API. Okay, so I added in my OpenAI key and now we're here on Supabase and this is going to be our database. So what you should do is log in if you haven't already, and then there will be a prompt to go and start a project. So that's exactly what we're going to go and do. So I'm going to click start your project over here. And here we go. Here is the project setup. So I've set it up in the organization YT Antigravity, which is where I make all my YouTube videos. The project name is extract from CSV for ecom business. And then I have the database password over here. And I've put the region as Europe because that's the closest region to me. And then we can go here and click create new project. The first thing we need to go and get is the project URL. So I want you to come here to connect and then click on API keys, and the project URL should be the first thing that pops up when you click API keys. And then the second thing we need to go get is our API key. So we go to project settings over here and then we click on API keys. and then your key should be right at the bottom of this page once it eventually loads. So here we go, under secret keys here, you have your API key right here. So I'm just going to click copy, and then I'm going to paste it into my .env file. There we go. So my .env file is all set up and I've saved it. So now all my keys are ready to go. So let's go through to the next step. So if I'm going to look for the implementation plan, no, the walkthrough over here. So the first thing we have done is create env, add the credentials in. That is all done. Go to Supabase and do all of that. Then we need to run the SQL migration in the Supabase SQL editor. So we can click copy over here. And then I want to go back to Supabase over here, and I want to go to SQL editor on the left side. And all the code that Antigravity went and gave us, I'm going to just copy it into here, and I'm going to click run. And this is going to go and create us an entire table, right? And this is the table it's going to use as the database for our project. So let me flick over here to table editor, since it was already done. Let's go take a look. Hopefully a new table should pop up soon. There we go. Sessions over here, and this should have all the different sessions for our project. And here we go, here is the table all set up. Okay, and I couldn't be bothered to go create the bucket myself, which is what it says here, create a storage bucket in Supabase. So I just asked Antigravity to go give me the SQL code, go create the bucket, just a bit lazy. So I'm going to copy the SQL code over here, go back to our SQL editor, get rid of everything here, and I'm going to click run. And this should hopefully go and create the bucket for us, and we can also double check that. Awesome, we're done here, and I think it should be under storage, buckets, perfect. And hopefully, yes, we have the CSV files bucket created as well. So that's a super cool hack. Antigravity can set pretty much everything up for you in Supabase if you need it to. So therefore, that's why I kind of got everything done over here. And then I can start the server. This is a terminal command. So we're going to go over here. We're going to click on new terminal. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste our terminal command into here, and I'm going to click enter. Oh, there we go. It's started. Awesome. And then we're going to be able to open this link over here, and we can actually go and test the backend. So you can see application has started up. Let me flick back to our Chrome browser and paste in here. Here we go, CSV Standardizer API. And we have all the different APIs that Antigravity has gone and set up as part of its backend, so we can go and test this entire solution. Okay, so let's quickly run a test. I'm on that link over here. I've chosen the file sampleproducts.csv. I think that's the one I've got open up over here. Yeah, sampleproducts.csv. It's just a bunch of product files. It's going to grab what it can grab, and I guess it's going to leave the rest blank. So we can double check which fields it's got, etc., from this. So let's go and let's click execute over here. And this should hopefully go and ingest the file and grab all the things we need. So I'm going to wait for this to go and load. Awesome. So the status is uploading. There was one file, which is correct. And if I copy over the session ID, and now perhaps we can get API sessions ID. Let's see what this does. So if I click try this, and if I paste this in, let's click execute. Awesome. So we can see it is currently processing with no error message. So I'm going to keep an eye on this. And once it's done, we can go and download the CSV file on the other end, and we can see what it did. Okay, so I think it's done. It says review, which I think is the final status. And I'm going to go over here to export, and I'm going to try it out. And let me see if I can copy this session ID over here and click execute. And hopefully this should give me an option to download the actual file. So it gave me a download URL over here, and I just copied it and pasted it into here, and it started a download. So let me open up what the file it actually went and downloaded. And there we go. This is all the different products that it grabbed. Boom, 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 as a product name, the product description. The unit cost was over here, the stock quantity, the brand was blank in all of our ones, and then the category. It grabbed everything that we needed pretty well. I'm just going to cross-reference this document to our original document and see if it all worked out. So yeah, I actually cross-referenced this document, which is what we got, the sample products document, and the standardized output document. And they're all exactly the same. It got everything perfectly. So it made the automation really, really well. And I'm going to test this with more documents. But I think, do you know what? I'm actually happy with how it's built it. Now, maybe if I was building it for production, I might try like 5 or 6 documents before building out the front end. But I think we're good. I think I'm quite confident it's done it really well. So let's go and build out the front end next, right? So we've tested the back end and it all works nicely. So let's go over to our Chrome tab. And if we recall from our step-by-step document, We have it over here to use prompt 4 to generate the front end instructions. We've already done that. We've gone and built the back end. The next step is to build the front end in Antigravity using the instructions from step 7. So let's go and do that, right? So we're going to go over to Google Gemini over here, and this has got our front end instructions. Yes, it does. So let's go and copy these front end instructions, and let's paste this in, and let's use Gemini 3.1 High, and let's go and send this across. Sweet. So this is going to go and generate our front end. While it's doing that, again, keeping the productivity high, we're going to also use prompt 5 to generate some testing instructions. So let's go over to our prompt number 5. Here's all our testing instructions. So let me go and copy and paste this. And I'm going to paste our testing instructions into here, into our Gemini chat, and I'm going to click enter. And boom, this is going to go and create Antigravity some testing instructions. So this is going to save us a bunch of time, because normally you have to do all of these tests manually, but it's going to write tests in and check each API based on best practices. And Antigravity is going to do it by itself, basically, which is what's really, really cool and the magic in this prompt, essentially. So there we go. It's going to run all the tests for us and write all of them for us. Okay, so we got all our testing instructions. Let's quickly check up on Antigravity. We can see it's still doing some of its stuff. It's implementing its plans and creating our front end for us. So I'm going to wait on that. So the front end is done. I had one problem, which I fixed in literally like one sentence. So essentially, if I go up, no, this was our prompt, and then I'm looking for the next thing I said here. So when I clicked on the front end, when I opened it up and it gave me a link, it looked like this. Like, I don't even know what this is. It looked terrible, right? So I said, this does not look right. The dashboard looks terrible. Look at the photo I sent you. Just kind of told it what was wrong. And then it basically broke, didn't code one thing properly, and it fixed it. And it gave me the link again. We can see here, localhost 5174. And this is our lovely dashboard. It's all set up and it looks really, really neat, right? Once I'm over here, we got the supplier data engine, we got recent imports, and I can import a new batch. So I can go do that. And then also we have a view button over here, and I can adjust any of the details I want, like hello. Awesome. So I got a new description in here, and we have all the different source files. And if I show you the file I did right at the start, so if I go over here, this was the one we tested with on the back end. And you can see over here, it has all of the information that we need, and it looks super, super cool and super, super neat. And I think I haven't tried this out, and it has a 3 invalid, like empty, empty over here, and empty. But let's say if I go and click export master CSV, there we go. It downloads a CSV for me, and it all works perfectly. So got to give it to it. It did a pretty good job. I am going to also try add a new CSV in here. So let's give that a shot. Also, let's click over here and add this in, and let's click start AI processing. It's going to upload the files. AI is mapping my columns, etc. It says the file upload has started successfully. If I go over to the dashboard, we can see over here it is processing, and I'm just going to wait for it to finish processing, and I'll get back to you. And there we go, the whole thing processed. And if I click view over here, it says AI is mapping our columns. We can see over here we have all the different product names, all the supplier SKUs, and stock quantities and unit quantities, etc. I'm also going to open up this document just to make sure this all worked properly. And yeah, it all looks great. It extracted all the information from this CSV and it put it all in. And this is actually in a different format to the previous CSV, and it worked perfectly. So I am really, really happy with this solution, and it worked really, really well. So the next thing I want to do now is we've built out the front end and we've built out the back end. It's all done. We've used the prompt to create the testing instructions. Now we need to get Antigravity to actually go and test it for us. So we're over here, and I'm going to copy our testing instructions, flick over to Antigravity, paste these in, and let me get rid of this last line. Actually, I don't like that one. And let's click send. And now this is going to give our huge list of testing instructions. Wow, it's quite a big list of testing instructions over to Antigravity, and it's going to go and complete some tests for us and make sure everything works perfectly. And once that is done, then we are going to secure our automation by adding a password on it, and then we're going to go and deploy the entire thing. Okay, so it's done testing and it passed all the different tests. Brilliant. So that's a large portion of all the heavy work done over here. Let's move on to the next step. Is going to be to secure our automation by pasting the basic authentication prompt directly into Antigravity. So the testing's done. Now we go over to prompt number 6, which is basic auth prompt over here. I'm going to copy this. And I'm going to paste this prompt directly into Antigravity so it can secure our entire automation. This is because when we go and publish this automation to the cloud, we deploy it, right? Anyone can access it if they have the link. Whereas right now we're going to set up a username and password, so you can't use it unless you have that username and password. While the basic auth is working, we can also do the next step. So we have over here to use prompt 7 to generate deployment instructions. So I'm going to go over here to prompts, and I'm going to go to prompt number 7. And I'm going to copy this entire prompt here. We're going to go back to Google Gemini and we're going to paste this prompt in over here. And this is going to go give us a big and large prompt to put into our Antigravity to deploy this automation. The reason we're deploying it is because you don't need your laptop to run to actually use this automation. Whereas right now, everything we've done has run exclusively from my laptop. It's all locally hosted. And we want to host this on the web so we can use it from anywhere. It doesn't use our laptop, so we can use this automation from anywhere, right? That's the whole point. So therefore, we have our lovely deployment specifications, and we're going to copy this and paste this into Antigravity once we're done with the authentication. And this should allow us to use Google Cloud Run to host the entire automation. So our HTTP authentication is done and it's all kind of working. I'll test this once we go and deploy. Next thing I want to do is copy over our Cloud Run kind of deployment prompt over here, and I'm going to paste this in. I'm going to use Claude Opus 4.6 for deployment since it has less bugs normally when I deploy things using Claude over Gemini. And then I am going to get rid of this and just keep the deployment specification and click go. And now this is going to go and deploy our entire project. Okay, so it's done the deployment, it's set it all up essentially, and now we need to just enter in this command in and add in all our keys at the bottom over here. So I'm going to quickly go and do that. Okay, so we started to deploy and essentially it's building the container for us. We just entered our command in. And hopefully this is where most of the errors happen or when they don't happen. And this building container part normally takes the longest as well. So I'll get back to you if there's an error or if it deploys, and we'll go from there. Okay, so it all deployed. Let me flick over to Antigravity over here. You can see it gave me the URL right here. And when I flick over here, I have the username and password that I need to type in so no one else can access our automation. So I'm going to type in the username is actually subscribe. If that isn't a hint to do what you need to do next, then I don't know what is. And then we have the password, and I'm going to click sign in. Let's not save this down. And here we go. I'm going to wait for this to load since my internet is currently terribly slow. And here we go. It all looks good, exactly how it did on my laptop, except now it looks even better. Let's go and import a new batch and let's add one of our CSV files in. Okay, I added a file in. I'm going to click Start AI Processing. And it's going to start processing our file. We can go back to dashboard and we can see it's processing. I'm going to wait till it's finished just to make sure everything works end to end after the deployment. Okay, so it's done. It says needs review, which makes sense. And if we click view, hopefully, yes, our entire project file is all up in here. And can we edit this? Perfect. 42, sweet. Unit cost is 42 on Woo hoodie with logo. And I'm going to click export and let's check out the CSV as well. There we go, and boom, it downloaded. I'm going to open up the CSV. Here is the CSV file, and it all looks really great, and you can see my update has also taken place when I exported the CSV from our front end over here, and everything looks amazing. So there we go. The idea in my head at the start of this video is now reality, and I didn't write a single line of code to do it. So if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate if you could interact with it, whether that be a like, a subscribe, or a comment. If you have any questions, drop them down below. I will be reading through them and answering anything you guys have questions on. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.